Welcome to Motivation with Marissa. I'm Marissa Mitchell. And this month, I'm shining the light on Pride Month with a very special guest and a good friend, Monroe Alise, activist, actress, media personality, and more. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you know I just scratched the surface with your titles and your accomplishments, but we'll get to some of them as well. When do you hear the word pride? What does it mean to you?
Right off the bat, community, family, yeah.
What do you think it means to the rest of us? What are we missing?
You know, honestly, I think that when cisgender individuals, when heterosexual individuals hear the word pride, sometimes they don't think human. Sometimes they don't think human. Sometimes they don't think that our existence equates to humanity, to love, to happiness, to joy. And I think that that is where we are lacking as human beings in this world.
And you've certainly been of that world in a very deep and personal way. And also, I would argue, a role model to many others who you didn't have a Monroe Alise
I did not.
to look up to.
No,
but now
I did
you're
not.
that for thousands, if not millions, all over the world. Take me back in your journey. You're DC's very own, born and bred from this area. When did you first realize that you had something different about you in your environment, especially?
You know, it started for me very early. It started for me very early. I grew up in a house with two other siblings. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And so for me, the middle child, the knee baby, you know, the forgotten one, you know, the black sheep, all of those things. I knew that there was something different, but it wasn't until I went to elementary school. Yeah, it wasn't until I went to elementary school and I was sitting with a homegirl of mine in elementary school and it was bathroom time. And when it was time to go into the bathroom, I went with her into the girls' bathroom. My teacher snatched me back and said, no, boys don't go in there. Girls go in that bathroom. And it had dawned on me that was what the difference was that I couldn't put my finger on because I didn't have that language when I was growing up. I knew that I didn't, you know, play with the toys that my brothers liked to play with and I would get in trouble with, or they would snatch away the dolls and the pink and, you know, that my cousins was playing with. But I didn't have that language. And so when I found that out, I said, oh, something's not adding up there. And for me at that moment, survival mode clicked in. I had to learn to walk a different way and talk a different way or try to be a different way. Now, was I good at it? That's a different story.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what that at that very age is when I knew that there was something different immediately.
And in grade school, that's young. So how did you hide or conceal who you really were?
You know, it's unfortunate, but I think at that age, when you express or when your parents and people express that there's something about you that they do not approve of, and when it is innately embedded in you, you find ways to steal and hide your moments of joy. I remember being in my room and I wanted really long hair, so I would like put the shirts on my head and create little buns and, you know, make sure that the door was closed, and I would wrap sheets around like dresses and have those moments. And that's really when I fell in love with entertainment and theater and television, because I would watch and emulate these characters and, you know, the way that Barbara Streisand would, you know, with her nails and, you know, definitely, you know, Bette Midler and Hocus Pocus and, you know, the regalness and, you know, the way that she would move. That became my escape.
And don't get me started on Diana Ross, because I did all of that.
Yes.
And what, with the wigs and the wind and the hairbrushes in front of the mirrors. So those, even in your secret or quiet place, those were joyous moments for you, where you felt safe enough to be you. Can you recall any hard moments, any challenging moments at school or within your family growing up, knowing what you knew?
Oh, absolutely. One of the moments that I definitely recall the most, especially it's Christmas. You know, growing up, and we're taught to believe, and I don't want to spoil it for any of the children, but you know, about Santa Claus.
Yes, we learn about Santa Claus.
We learn about Santa Claus, right? And I would write Santa these letters. I want my My Little Pony, and I want my Easy Bake Oven, and I want my Cabbage Patch doll, and I've been a good child. and Christmas would come. Now, this is from the era of, I'm dating myself, you know, the circulator.
Okay.
And so my parents would give us, they would give us this circulator, honey, and we would have to circle the gifts that we want Santa to give us and not put our names on them, right? And so, of course, it was easy to tell which one was mine. And when I would write Santa, and I would get up on Christmas Day and I would see all these these presents under the tree, and open them, and it'd be baseball bats and golf clubs and you know, all of these things. And I'm like, this is none of the things that I wanted. So why does Santa not like me? And so I wrote Santa a letter, and I was asking, what have I done to you? Was I not good enough? Like, I did everything my parents asked me to do. And that was one of the most challenging moments, like coming to grips with the fact that my father is a man's man. You know, my older brother and my younger brother are men's men in their own definition, right, of what that looks like. And my father could only give me what he had. Yeah. And so when I wasn't what he thought I was or what I was supposed to be, he didn't have anything to give me. And so those were some challenging moments.
And so you're raised in that environment. At what point did you make the decision, because I'm sure it became before the transition, to say, you know what, I'm going to rest in and beam in my true and authentic self? What was the turning point for you?
So even at that time, I didn't find the language to know chosen family, right? But, you know, God has a way of doing for me what I can't do for myself. And he had placed an individual in my life who was like-minded like me. We both had a secret that we were holding.
How old were you?
I would say about 15. We both had that secret, and so when we met in high school, you know, we would congregate at the playground and talk about the boys that we liked, and you know, the boys that we were talking to, and you know, here in D.C. we had, you know, Union Station is where the boys would meet up, and you know, the community would gather and things, and I learned to have a separate life outside of the mask that I would wear in the house or in these certain spaces, and that was literally how I navigated, and it wasn't until later when I started to kind of figure out that the shell that I was wearing wasn't an indication of who I authentically was. And so I started, like, you know, trying to figure out what that looked like and finding the freedom to wear my clothes a little tighter or maybe put on a little lip gloss. And there was that transition in the things that I actually liked and not what society told me I should like or what I should wear based off of the representation of the gender identity that my brothers had.
So now you're moving into early adulthood. Is this when you started really delving also into the performing arts and acting? And how did that, in a sense, make things better?
So, you know, what's so interesting, you know, they say sometimes they got to get worse before it can get better, right? So music was actually my first love. And so I started pursuing the music industry first. And I met up with a guy who wanted to manage me, and he presented me to a record label here in La Plata, and they were in love with my voice. Oh, they wanted to sign me. They wanted me to sing about guns, drugs, and women, all of the experiences I had know nothing about. But they didn't want me, they just wanted my voice. And so I was like, well, I can't do that. They was like, well, we don't know how to market you. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that was the hurt that I got from the music industry, which pushed me. I said, but I have to do something creatively. And so I said, well, I'm gonna just start pursuing acting. And so I would catch, I'm gonna date myself again. I would catch, my mom worked for
We're in the same boat, by the way, so we're dating both of us.
Because you know, you sitting here looking 21, I wanna make sure.
Look, I'll take it, I'll take it.
And so my mom worked for Amtrak. And so we would ride the train for free. And so I would ride the train to New York City to get the backstage paper where they would have all the auditions, and you would have to circle the auditions and show up at the casting calls and things like that. And this was, I'm 15, 16, 17, you know, catching the train up and down, making sure I don't miss that last 10 o'clock train, because you know you'd be there for the night. And I ended up getting a pilot that they were filming in Hampton. And I remember being on set for about 18 hours, and it felt like 2 minutes. And I was like, oh, this is it.
Yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
This is what I want to do.
It's my calling. This is it. Now, was that before or after the transition 8 years ago?
That was before the transition. Now, this is how the transition came into play. So as the pilot didn't get picked up, there's a woman here in DC who had wrote a play about the House of Snow, which is a ballroom house based in Virginia. And she wanted to cast me as Autumn Snow, the trans woman of the house. And so I would have to show up to all of the rehearsals as my character. So when she casted me, she was like, okay, well, now you got to show up. So I had shaved off all of the facial hair at this time. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm now openly, dating men. And so I shaved all the facial hair off, and I was playing in makeup at that time. I was one of the first girls with the beard and, makeup and all of those things, but that's another story. And so I had shaved all the facial hair off, and I had asked my mom for a skirt. And she looked at me and she was like, okay, girl. And gave me
Mothers always know.
She already knew.
Yeah.
And my father wasn't home. And so I was like, all right, well, let me hurry up and get dressed. And as I then got dressed and put the skirt on and I'm coming down the stairs, my father was coming in the door. And he was like, what in the... And I was like, listen, we're going to be rich. It's for a show. We're going to make a lot of money. I'm only doing this for this. And he just was speechless. And I went and I never took the clothes off.
Now, it's one thing to be able to put it on and off, the clothing, the hair, everything else, but you took it a step further. Talk about that process and what it meant, not just for you, but your family as well.
When I had to show up as the character Autumn Snow, and I had to go shopping and get the women's clothes, it was the first time I felt free. I felt my most authentic self. I couldn't take them off. Everything in me said that I would rather fight. You would have to peel these off of me before I take them off. And so I decided in that moment that I would fight for my identity no matter what. And that's exactly what it became, to the point where I was forcing people. I would ignore you. If you called me by my dead name, I would ignore you. I remember one time I was walking down H Street, and my pastor at the time had saw me walking down the street and was calling me by my dead name. Honey, the way I strutted down that street until he got my right name right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Monroe Alise.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it became that fight. It was such a struggle, and I remember. And mind you, me and my father are in a great place, but he didn't understand and he didn't know. And he did exactly what most parents do, but the Bible says this, and then that Bible thumping thing became an authentic fear of, I don't want anyone to hurt my child.
Yeah, it's out of protection.
Yeah. And so that was one of the biggest struggles. But after that, listen, if my family is with it, if God can be for me, who can be against me?
And so you've changed everything.
Everything. Yeah.
That must have been hard emotionally, mentally, even though it was what you wanted to do.
Yeah. It was, it was the biggest blessing that I ever had, but it was also one of the hardest things that I ever had to decide to do, because there's an internal decision that you have to make that I don't think that a lot of people understand. This is why I tell my trans siblings that it is an act of bravery and resistance to exist, to show up and walk out of the door every day in your authentic truth is the most authentic sacrifice of advocacy and bravery and resilience that any person could ever do. Because you have to decide that no matter whatever way the wind blows, no matter what person misgenders me, no matter what person accepts, disrupts, or tries to tear me down today, I am still going to be authentically me.
And you made that change at 29?
29.
And I know you talked about your dead name, but I want to talk about who you were formally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
baby, you couldn't tell me nothing. The brows were still snatched.
Still.
Baby, the brows were still browing.
What would you say to him now after all that you've gone through?
Hold on. Listen, I remember taking this picture. This was going to be the album cover. This picture was going to be my album cover. Yeah. And I was in a dark place. Listen, hold on. Listen, this too shall pass. And that's something that I want to tell all of my trans siblings, my non-binary individuals, that listen, they say that weeping endures for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And I'm telling you that if you just hold on, the process isn't pretty, but it's necessary. And your journey is your journey. It don't matter what it looked like for anybody else. This is yours. You are the most important person in your life. The most important person in your life. And if you don't do it, it won't get done.
Do you ever miss him?
I don't. I don't, because there is still a version of that person inside of me. The memories didn't go anywhere. The presentation may have changed, and all of my siblings and anyone that knew me in that identity will tell you, baby, listen, my mannerisms, the person that I am is still the same. Now, I remember talking to one of my dear friends, a cis hetero man, and I was like, do you see anything like different? He said, it finally makes sense. He said, because I kept trying to figure out why I wanted to open the door for you and take out the trash and like hold you in this regard, because there's a feminine energy that had existed in me before an identity was placed on me.
Wow. Wow. And he saw her.
Did.
Before she became her.
Did. My God.
This is where that pride comes from.
Beautiful. Beautiful. There is I wish I could bottle up and sell the joy and peace that comes with being the authentic version of yourself. Because that is something that is missing, I think, inside of all of the people who refuse to understand and accept other people's experiences. Notice I didn't put a sexuality.
You did not.
Or a gender on that. But just other people's experiences.
And now we get to experience you on screens all over the country, being one of the stars of P-Valley. You've done so much. What does it mean to you to be a source of light for people who are battling the same things you did throughout pretty much your entire life?
You know, I didn't have that visibility and representation growing up. You know, if I would have saw someone that looked like me earlier, I probably would have 9 times out of 10, I would have transitioned earlier. I know that everything happened the way that it was supposed to. I do know that. But what I'm saying is that the importance of visibility and representation is so pivotal, because when you see yourself, when you see someone that looks like you or a possibility model for you, you can place that, I like that, I understand that. And so to say that I am that for someone else is a privilege and a gift.
Finally, I want to talk about some of the projects you're working on, as well as your relationship with the one, the only T.S. Madison.
The icon!
That continues.
So, and that is the person that was that visibility and representation for me. It wasn't until I saw Madison that I was like, oh, now, wait a minute now. Now, hold on, this is it. Because I had RuPaul growing up. RuPaul is a legendary performer, but he is not trans. That is a job, that is his career. But when I saw Madison, when Madison hit the internet, I was like, now this I can identify with. And so to now be in close proximity and working with her on the T.S. Madison Starter House, where she has donated her home in partnership with NASM, Inc. in Atlanta, a legacy nonprofit that's been in business for over 35 years, where we will be housing Black trans women who have been impacted by the systems that affect us on a daily basis, all types of systems, truly a gift. She is the epitome of visibility and representation.
I always end these segments with one question, and I'm going to give it to you as well. Monroe Alise, what's motivating you these days?
The thing that is motivating me the most these days, that's so interesting.
Yeah, what keeps you going, keeps you fighting?
And I think that the first thing that came to mind for me is my younger trans and non-binary siblings. Because I stand on so many amazing trans and non-binary women's shoulders and individual shoulders. And I know that these younger trans people need someone's shoulders to stand on. And so I know that the freedoms, the little bit of freedoms, the little bit of accessibility, the little bit of things that we've been granted now in this administration and the way that they're trying to take things from us and all of the fear-mongering that they're placing on us, making sure that the people that are coming behind me, my trans siblings, my LGBTQIA plus community members, for the babies that don't even know yet, that are still trying to figure it out, that's what motivates me.
Thank you so much for your time, your story, your gift. I'm excited to continue to watch your star rise. I think you're fabulous. I know we hit it off years ago on Lion Lunch Hour.
And congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you.
You look phenomenal. There's a glow and there's an energy about you, and it has nothing to do with the way that you look. That internal glow that is pouring out and seeping out. Thank you for being a motivation to people. Thank you for being a possibility too.
Oh, thank you. Love you.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you.